Hey everybody, Rush Limbaugh died, and I'm not going to jump on the Twitter bandwagon where there are people who are basically happy he's passed away. I think that is absolutely horrible. You can disagree with a person's point of view and yet celebrate their life, and that's what I'm doing because anybody who is a person in the business of being a media personality, a vlogger in this case, has some appreciation for Rush Limbaugh. If they don't, it means they didn't really look at him from a business perspective. Plus, I have the added um, history of knowing Rush's ex-wife, Michelle Sixta, which is another story. But Rush got to where he was. Excuse me for a second. Making sure I've got the right coffee filter. He really started off as Kansas City Royals radio announcer, and he was really into his work. And I remember Michelle. This is where Michelle comes in. Tell me that about they were in love for a time, but I think he was really driven to build. And I think I can say this without giving away any confidences. He was really driven to build himself to a point where I think it took a toll on their relationship. Um, and what he discovered in building the Rush Limbaugh that we are aware of today and believe we know is that he discovered he could be his authentic self and gain an audience. Now, his authentic self is a willingness to say things that others would not say, even though they believe them. And he knew by just paying attention to feedback, or what we call engagement now, people calling, or when social media came. Remember, Rush came before Facebook, okay, and Twitter, and so they sort of inherited his flock. But um, Rush could tell when he was hitting a point, and he capitalized on that. And he realized that when he focused his ire, as it were, on politics, um, it had a special impact. And it particularly had a special impact with politicians themselves, be they liberal or conservative or independent. And it was to a point where he began to have influence on American political life. That's no small potatoes, okay? That is no small potatoes. And the question I ask myself every day is, why is it that conservative media is better monetized than liberal media? And this is what I can come up with, okay? It's not so much that Rush Limbaugh was conservative. Rush Limbaugh understood that he could be nasty. Now, you can be liberal and nasty too, but if you take a look at liberal media, it's not commonly presented as being nasty. It's commonly presented as intellectual, thoughtful, compassionate. A lot of the things that Rush Limbaugh did not bring to the table when he got behind the mic to do his radio show. Okay, that's in Rush Limbaugh, a lot like President Trump, former President Trump, represented white American id, the id, all right, that part that the common Midwestern white American male, that place that Rush Limbaugh could go, that those who are white, middle America, and male who choose to be what they believe was being conservative didn't want to be, but Rush could reflect for them. All right? And I think in a lot of ways, Rush forced people to look at themselves and say, hey, do I want to be that way as society became more integrated economically? Not just racially, but racially economically. Um, Although I hate the term race because we're all really the same species, we're all the same race, we're just different breeds, right? But I digress. Um, Rush was driven to build his brand. He was driven to push that. And he got to a point where he was clearing, I think, 400 million 15 years ago, 2006, 2007, he was clearing $400 million. Um, Hats off to him. You know, I say hats off to Rush for showing that way, um, even though I don't think it's healthy. It's, but he also picked up the difference between Rush Limbaugh and other shock jock people was that shock jock people would say things just to be insulting to somebody else deliberately, right? And Rush wasn't looking to be insulting to an individual, okay? Rush was looking to, he was looking to say things about that were policy oriented, that were gauche. And there's a fine difference there, okay? There's a fine difference there. He was looking to influence what he thought was a liberal policy that took us away from what he believed was Pan-Americana. I'm not saying he was right. I'm saying that's where he was coming from. And I'm also saying that he tapped into people who believed that, but felt like they had no voice until he came along. So, what's the lesson for influencers? What's the lesson is this? There's good and there's bad. The good lesson is to be your authentic self. The bad lesson is to not be so authentic that you wind up hurting people to some degree, and thus igniting a backlash against you and what you do. And it takes your sponsors away, which has happened to him on a number of occasions. Where he, like you said, inappropriate things about women, for example. It's too bad that we're wired as people to react, in some cases favorably, to messages that we know we shouldn't be echoing or think. Alright? And Rush knew that. Okay? Rush knew that. But then he would just push that button. And the button, when he pushed the button, out came cash. Rush came along at a time that, I was about to say we'll never see another Rush Limbaugh, but basically we just had Rush Limbaugh in the White House, so I'm wrong. What happened was that Trump had the various platforms he was on, and like Rush, taken away from him, because that's not what a president is supposed to do. A president is supposed to be the CEO of the country and make sure the government works on behalf of the people. We didn't have that with Trump. What we had was an extension, again, of the white male American id, just like Rush Limbaugh. So it's no surprise that Rush Limbaugh got the Medal of Freedom from Donald Trump. But there are other, and I think other worthy lessons to learn for media people in watching Rush Limbaugh. They go beyond his personality, business model, his staff, and he had African Americans working with him as well, like most famously Bo Snedley, right? So it wasn't, but you have to remember that the people who work for him also sided with his point of view. Point of view aside, I'm talking about corporate structure, marketing, legal. There's a whole infrastructure that makes up Team Rush Limbaugh that anybody in media should pay attention to. You can pay attention to that and replicate that without feeling like you have to be Rush Limbaugh. Just saying. So anyway, I just want to get those thoughts out of the way. I'll go back here and make some coffee so I can wake up. Subscribe to Zenny62 and let me know what your thoughts are about Rush Limbaugh from the standpoint of media business. Because look, you're going to hear all day long about people not liking him or happy that he passed away, which again I say is absolutely heinous. I have friends of all kinds of points of view, but the one thing is that they're friends. And I think what has to matter most in today's society is your heart. How good you personally are to people. Everybody is going to have a point of view that somebody else doesn't like. That's life. But how you treat people, I think, makes the measure of you as a person.